Would you believe if I told you there's a psychological force causing most people to spend rather than save and become rich? In this video, we'll talk about the endowment effect and how it could be the reason you can't seem to get ahead financially. The endowment effect is when you find it hard to let go of something, even though you know you don't need it. This often happens because we feel like we've wasted money if we give it away for nothing. Do you ever find yourself holding onto a prize or reward that moments ago you would have given away without a second thought? Now that it's yours, suddenly it feels invaluable. That's the endowment effect in action. According to economist Richard Thaler, the endowment effect is a theory that proposes individuals assign a higher value to things solely because they already possess them. It's connected to the mere ownership effect in social psychology, which means that some people who own an object tend to regard it more highly than people who don't. This phenomenon is also known as the endowment effect bias. The endowment effect occurs because we value things more highly once we own them, and this in turn causes us to be reluctant to part with them, even when it would be in our best interests to do so. Think about it this way. You buy a coffee mug for $5. A few days later, you see the same mug sold for $10. Even though you know that someone else is willing to pay twice as much for the mug, you might still hesitate to sell it because it feels like you're losing money. After all, you paid $5, so selling it for $10 feels like a loss. But here's the thing, if you don't sell the mug, you lose $5. That's because the value of the mug to you is only $5, even though someone else is willing to pay more. The endowment effect can cause us to make all sorts of suboptimal decisions regarding our finances. For example, we might be reluctant to sell a lost value stock because we think we must wait until it goes back up before breaking even. But if the stock never recovers, we lose out on potential gains. Marketers and companies often exploit the endowment effect to get you to spend more money, which is why it may be making you poor. But before we get into how to combat the endowment effect, it's worth understanding further how it works. In 1991, researchers Kahneman, Knetsch, and Thaler experimented with studying the endowment effect. They asked participants how much they would be willing to pay for a coffee mug and how much they would be willing to sell it. According to the study's findings, participants were willing to shell out an average of $7 for the mug. However, they were only willing to part with it for $3.50. In other words, once people obtained the mug, the value they place in it increased twice by the original price. An even more recent study by Don Ariely, a psychology and behavioral economics professor at Duke University, came to the same conclusions. Participants in the study were given either a Hershey's Kiss or a Lindt truffle as a reward. The following question posed to them was on the price they would be willing to part with their chocolate. The study indicated that participants who were given a Hershey's Kiss valued it at an average of 0.14 cents. In contrast, persons who were given a Lindt truffle valued it at an average of 0.53 cents. This value was more than 3 times the value of Hershey's Kisses. In other words, even though both the Hershey's Kisses and the Lindt truffle were provided to the consumers at no cost, the consumers place a significantly higher value on the Lindt truffle. The endowment effect can significantly influence our finances, leading us to make decisions that are less than optimal and costing us money as a result. Now that you understand how the endowment effect operates, let's explore where this occurs most frequently in our daily lives. For instance, the stock market is one of the most common places where the endowment effect can be noticed. Many people can become overly attached to a particular stock and refuse to sell it, even if it's losing value. As we mentioned earlier, this can cause us potential gains that we could have made had we sold the stock when it was still valuable. Another example of the endowment effect is when it comes to bargain shopping. Many people get overly attached to a product they have found on sale, even if it turns out that it's not something they need or would benefit from it in any way. As a result, they end up wasting money by purchasing items they don't need. Finally, The endowment effect can also be seen in our attitude towards possessions we already own. We may view them as having more value than what we could sell them for, and therefore opt against selling them. Not only does this cost us potential profit, but it also inhibits us from freeing up resources for other investments or purchases we could make with that money instead. Knowing where the endowment effect tends to come into play, we can be aware of our biases and make more informed decisions regarding our money. This will ensure that our financial decisions are based on what is truly best for us, not just what we feel better. Now, let's learn some strategies to cut the one habit that will break you forever. Number 1. Be aware of the bias. The first step to combating the endowment effect is to be aware of it. Once you know that you're susceptible to this bias, you can start to take steps to avoid it. Some steps are simple, like separating yourself from the item or situation by taking a few deep breaths before making any decisions. It may also help to talk to someone who isn't emotionally attached to the situation and get their opinion. Number 2, question your attachment. It's important to ask yourself why you're so attached to a particular item or decision. If you can't come up with a good answer, then it's likely that you're feeling the effects of the endowment effect. Once you've identified this bias, you can start to work on minimizing its influence over your decisions. Number 3, consider other options. Before making any final decisions, take some time to consider other options available to you. Ask yourself how else the money could be spent or the item could be used more beneficially. This will help to ensure that your choice is based on what makes sense financially rather than just what feels right emotionally in the moment. Number 4, take some time. Sometimes we make decisions too quickly without giving ourselves enough time to consider our options. Try to resist the urge to act impulsively and instead take some time away from the situation. This will allow you to think things through more carefully before making final decisions. Number 5, make a list of objectives. Before making any decisions, it can be helpful to list your objectives and how each option meets or fails to meet those goals. This will help ensure that you're making the best decision possible, as it forces you to look at the situation more objectively. For instance, if you're trying to decide whether or not to buy a particular item, make a list of why it would be beneficial and why it wouldn't. This will help you to look at the pros and cons more objectively and make an informed decision about how best to proceed. Number 6, ask for help. When all else fails, asking someone else for their opinion can be helpful. Sometimes a fresh point of view can help us see the situation in a new light and make more logical and beneficial decisions. Finally, number 7, always remember that the value of something can change over time. This is a crucial thing to remember when dealing with the endowment effect. Just because you've placed a value on something right now doesn't mean it will remain the same forever. Therefore, it's important to weigh your options and determine if the item in question is worth what you're paying for it, or if it could be more beneficial to wait and see how its value changes over time. One habit that will break you forever is the tendency to overvalue things you own. The endowment effect can influence our decisions, leading us to make financial choices that are less than ideal. By being aware of the bias and questioning our attachment to items, we can minimize its effects and make smarter decisions about our money. It's important to remember that no one has a crystal ball, so be mindful of your actions when it comes to spending and investing. Knowing how you may succumb to the endowment effect will help you avoid making costly mistakes in the future. Thank you for watching. I hope you have learned something from this video. If you like this video, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Thank you and goodbye.